Hello and welcome to Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial. Now this is where we take a look inside the world of media, analysing the trends, the issues and the reporting of some of the week's top stories. I'm Peter Ndoro and this is what's coming up on the show today. Well, we've known for a while that magazines and newspapers have been seeing declines in circulation over time. But what does this trend actually mean for journalism? Is this becoming a dying art? We'll also take a look at one of the oldest forms of traditional media, radio. In a world increasingly consumed by new media and digital platforms, how has radio managed to survive and in many cases even flourish? Remember, please share your thoughts with us on Twitter, and we'd like to know actually what you think, why you think that radio is still relevant in this day and age. Please use the hashtag SABC Media Monitor. Hashtag SABC Media Monitor. We'd love to hear what you think. Also look out for our new feature titled This Day in History a little later on in the show. We'll be taking you back in time. But first, let's take a look at what's on the front pages of your Sunday newspapers this morning. And we begin with the Sunday Times. And according to the Sunday Times, President Cyril Ramaphosa has thrown down the gauntlet at his party's National Executive Committee meeting, which is happening in Irene in Pretoria, daring his opponents within the party to try and remove him at the ANC National General Council next year if they dare. This, as the paper says, comes in the midst of the president facing a simmering revolt from those who lost at the Nasrec conference in 2017. The City Press is also leading with the ANC NEC meeting, where the paper says that party's top brass have been discussing burning issues ranging from land right through to the public protector, which are issues dividing party members at the moment along factional lines. The paper also says the Derek Hanekom issue will be left to the top six to resolve. The Sunday Independent is leading with a story describing how hundreds of residents temporarily relocated to make way for a mall as part of a R3.5 billion township renewal project in Gauteng are still crammed in a basic compound with limited basic services. This whilst the project continues to flounder almost a decade later. Apparently there's been no paper trail for the monies that have been spent on the renewal project to date. The Sunday Tribune is reporting King Goodwill Zwelithini is struggling to make ends meet, saying that the Royal Household Trust funds are just insufficient for his 7 palaces. Premier Sihle Zikalala said that 66 million rand was set aside for the royal household this financial year, with 19 million rand going towards the Royal Household Trust. The Weekend Argus is carrying a story about a Ukrainian tourist who was stabbed to death for his backpack on a scenic Hout Bay trail on Chapman's Peak Drive in Cape Town. Apparently, one of the attackers was apprehended after a neighbour's alert and has confessed to the crime. But also, let's take a look. That's what was print is got on their front pages. But what's trending on social media? Well, this is what it was a short while ago. And as you can see there, the top 2 trends are the MTN 702 Walk the Talk, hashtag Walk the Talk. And this, of course, is once a year, the radio station gets with citizens and they march and they walk through the city of Johannesburg. And this is the 25th edition. And there are about 55,000 people participating this year. And I'm told that this is the biggest mass participation event in the world of people doing something at the same time. And there's a 25-kilometer event, 15 and 8 or something like that. So that's busy trending at the moment. UFC, now I haven't watched much of this, I've got to be honest, and it's the Ultimate Fighting Championship trending like mad at the moment. So some big fights that have been taking place there. And this last number 4, Sunday Thoughts, and what's starting to happen more and more every day, there's a Monday motivation, a Tuesday motivation, Sunday Thoughts, and it's people just sharing what they think. And I picked one here, Supra Verma, who says, "It's not death we should fear from, it's the fact that we don't actually live every day. So that's the kind of thing that you'll find in Sunday Thoughts. And the Sacred Pace is one of our sister channels, the radio station Metro, and Tamin Gubeni there does a program focusing on religious issues, and this has become very, very popular, and people there are on trending on South Africa Trends. Okay, so that's what's trending. There's so much to go through on the show, as you can see this morning. To help us make sense of these stories are my guest editors today, Teresa Mallison, sub-editor at The Mail and Guardian, and Martin Vilakazi, former Metro FM manager and current director at Radio 101. Good morning to you both. Give me a wave. Oh, yeah, there we go. We'll be chatting to them in a short while. All right. Okay, so what we're going to do, and I'm hoping that we can get to this story in a short while, and what I'm hoping is we're going to start actually with this story. Magazines and newspaper sales worldwide have been under strain with declining circulations. More and more, some long-standing titles have been disappearing off our shelves and our newsstands, and we're going to find out what all of this means for traditional journalism. Is it on their way out? I wonder. Maybe not. Well, somebody who's been tracking this is Rachel Bryant, who's director and head of communications at Without a Doubt agency, and I'm hoping she's on Skype now. A very good morning to you, and thanks very much for joining us. Good morning, Rachel. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Ah, fabulous. Okay, so Rachel, magazine sales and newspaper sales are in decline. I just wonder, how bad is the situation?
Unfortunately, at the moment, we are down by 49% in newspaper figures in the last decade for newspapers, and 8.4% for the last quarter of 2018, which is quite dire if you think about the fact that it's been on the decline for quite a few years now.
All right, so what are people doing? Where are they going?
The latest Reuters report shows that most people are consuming their news on digital. So whether this is on your social media platform or on news channels, that remains to be seen. But also, obviously, the shift to things like podcasts and Instagram.
All right, so traditional titles and magazine newspapers, they've had to adapt, I guess. What sort of things have they been doing?
Well, locally, you would have noticed that some of the associated media titles have adapted quite well. Cosmopolitan recently did a shoppable issue where they had QR codes along with their fashion shoots, so you could actually buy online some of the products that they featured. And publications like Health and Leisure have just rebranded, so they are more collectible, curated content, and they've also turned into a bi-monthly with focus on digital for more of their trends and news.
All right, so now the Times newspaper, I see it closed their print edition, which used to come out every day, and they went digital. Does this mean that this is where readers are going? I think we kind of started chatting about that a short while ago.
Yes, so while we've seen obviously like a lot of move to online, you've got a lot of challenges like fake news and clickbait, as well as the fact that Facebook and Google are sort of monopolizing the space currently globally. So locally we have seen certain titles like Business Live, Network 24, as well as the Daily Maverick have seen some success in these new models of subscription to digital content, as well as once-off donations have also worked quite well.
All right, and that leads me to my next question. I mean, these digital platforms are also under pressure, aren't they? They too have to innovate. Paying for news isn't an easy model. I've seen abroad, Financial Times, for example, and the Guardian newspapers in the UK working on donations. So different models that are being applied.
Yes, so the Guardian recently saw a turnover for the first time in years And that was based on this new subscription model, a focus on digital. And also they found that the once-off donations worked quite well because it didn't tie you into a reoccurring monthly thing. Also, they found in their research that while people may be willing to pay for subscription online news, they usually won't go for more than one platform. So, you know, for example, Network 24, they do have people paying 99 Rand every month, according to the stats they revealed at the end of last year. But then if you are subscribing to one, it's unlikely you'll subscribe to more than one, which is obviously an issue for a lot of the other publications.
Oh, it is quite an interesting mix. Some will you pay and some ask for donations. What's happening in South Africa?
As I mentioned, Network 24 was happy to reveal their stats at the end of last year. I've just got some figures here with the Daily Maverick. They say they have around 5,500 people who are either subscribing or paying once-off donations, which is one of our more successful models locally, because it is quite a new space. And Network 24 with 40,000 digital subscribers. But I feel like 99 Rand is something that you would maybe consider as fair enough. But at the end of the day, true journalism, investigative journalism, is very important to any democratic and civil society. So this is something we as consumers need to be really seriously looking at, whether we are actually going to lose true journalism if we don't actually put our money into getting really high quality investigative content.
All right, so where does all of this leave journalism? Declining sales, declining circulations. Is journalism going to be a dying art?
Well, I'm an idealist, Peter, so I'd like to say no. But I think us as consumers need to really start looking at ourselves as being partly responsible for these changes and trends, and what role do we play and what can we do to help ensure that journalism isn't a dying craft.
All right, and that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks so much indeed, Rachel, for joining us on this Sunday morning and giving us a sense of what's happening out there in the world of media. Thanks so much indeed. All right, my guests, let me start with you, Teresa, because Mail and Guardian, I'm by the print version. I'm just very old school that way. And I just wonder, you do both, don't you? You've got the print and the digital. What have you seen over time in terms of, is there an uptake, or are people like me still loyal to print?
We do have a lot of readers who are still loyal to print. We also have a fair number of digital subscriptions as well. We're going to be relaunching the website in the next few weeks, so look out in about mid-August for that, and re-looking at our subscription model as well.
So, I mean, you're constantly having to revisit this, and advertisers, are they giving you any kind of feedback in terms of what works for them?
I'm not really on that side, Peter.
Okay.
We tend to have the firewall between advertisers and editorial. But yeah, we're definitely looking at ways to be more innovative. I think also, as you know, the Mail and Guardian was the first online news site in Africa, and I think one of the first in the world. So with our relaunch, we're going to be trying to get back up there,
All right, radio, I mean, that's your game. You consult in that space now.
Yes.
And I wonder, we've got online things happening now. You've also had to be innovative as well.
Yes. I think one of the most interesting thing about radio is that it's able to adapt over the years because of its accessibility. It continues to be the most accessed medium, and it's cheap. The cheapest actually is free. You know, the only thing that people pay for is a receiver. But the friendliness of radio, irrespective of the level of education, especially in an African continent, where people rely on radio for information, also rely on radio to connect with the loved ones wherever they are and get information. So it's going to grow and survive and adapt. I mean, if you look at podcasting is only taking South Africa by storm now, but radio is able to drive that space. They're embracing that innovation to extend their offering.
We're going to talk a lot more about radio in a short while as a genre that seems to be doing amazing things. But I'm just wondering about the innovation. So online, one of the challenges that we have in South Africa, of course, is data costs a lot of money. So are people listening and streaming more on online platforms, or are they still listening in their car and on a traditional sort of receiver?
I think people, depends where you are, but majority of people in South Africa, because of the cost aspect of data, they are positioning where they are at different time, space, during the course of the day, and their houses. People listen to radio. They do stream, they do download music for later consumption. They don't necessarily, because also the accessibility in the country in terms of data is still not strong in outside big cities. So people will continue to listen to radio for different reasons, but they do stream. But one thing that I've realized is that there's a cherry picking in terms of what they want to listen to online.
All right, and perhaps a final question here. It's an interesting one. There's a company that I came across online called slantnews.com. And one of their innovations is that they are going to pay their writers, this was a while ago, $100 per month plus $5 for every 500 clicks for 3 pieces a week. And I wonder if this is something that could work here, where there's a relationship between what you pay journalists based on what people are clicking online. I suppose it influences what they write, right?
Yeah, I have to be frank. I think that's a terrible business model. Journalism, as well as needing to make money, it's a social good. And I think when you look at the analytics, those important investigative pieces that take a lot of time, they might not always be the ones with the most clicks. We might be clicking about, I don't know, Beyonce or whoever. I don't think it will be good for journalism.
Traditional hard journalism, sometimes the important stories might not get the airtime that it deserves.
Yeah.
All right, okay, then we'll see what happens in the future. But let's quickly take a look at other media stories that unfolded in this past week. The government has, this past week, handed the SABC a lifeline after it was confirmed that the public broadcaster would be receiving some much-needed assistance in trying to raise 3.2 billion rand. However, the Finance Minister, Peter Ndoro, announced that the cash injections for the SOEs, such as the SABC, SAA and Denel, wouldn't be handed over at once, but in chunks as certain conditions are met. The tabled appropriations bill includes provisions for 3.2 billion rand for the cash-strapped public broadcaster.
Gambian President Yahya Jammeh was accused on Monday of ordering the murder of AFP correspondent.
So moving to West Africa, Reporters Without Borders, RSF this past week called for former Gambian President Yahya Jammeh, now living in exile in Equatorial Guinea, to be extradited back to Gambia to stand trial for the 2004 murder of Dada Haidara, a newspaper editor who was the Dean of Gambia's Journalists and RSF's correspondent. RSF issued the call after an army officer confessed on July the 22nd to Gambia's Truth and Reconciliation and Reparations Commission that he carried out Haidara's murder and said that it was ordered by President Jammeh.
Gambian President Yahya Jammeh was accused on Monday of ordering the murder of AFP correspondent Dada Haidara 15 years ago. During a public hearing before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a Gambian army officer admitted that he was directly involved in the murder of the journalist critical of Yahya Jammeh's regime. Dada Haidara was shot and killed by unidentified gunmen in his car on the outskirts of the capital, Banjul, in December 2004. The father of 4 and co-founder of private newspaper The Point was also the AFP correspondent, as well as Reporters Without Borders in Gambia. Established by law in December 2017 and composed of 11 members, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which investigates supposed crimes committed during the 22-year-long Jammeh regime, began its hearing in January 2019. Human rights defenders accuse Yahya Jammeh's regime of systematically torturing opponents and journalists, extrajudicial executions, arbitrary detentions and forced disappearances. Currently living in Equatorial Guinea in exile, Jammeh has denied involvement in Daida's murder.
Also this week, the Australian government announced on Friday that it will establish the world's first dedicated office within an antitrust regulator to police technology giants Facebook and Google, setting a precedent for global lawmakers grappling with the US internet companies' dominance. Australian Treasurer Geoff Frydenberg said that Canberra would form a special branch of the Australian Competition Consumer Commission, the antitrust watchdog, to scrutinise how the companies use algorithms to match advertisements with viewers, giving them a stronghold on the main income generator of media operators. All right, so that's a look at other news stories that have been important this past week. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll start looking at why is it that radio continues to be one of our favourites. Welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor. Now, radio is one of the oldest forms of media, and today we probe why it's still relevant and surviving, and in many instances thriving. The media industry is changing rapidly, especially when it comes to organisation and online advertising, which can be seen in radio as well. Right, and an article that was published on Media Online suggests that mobile phones play a huge role in why radio still survives and thrives. It further suggests that radio continues to innovate, to evolve. Well, let's find out from our radio consultant, former Metro FM manager. So why do we still listen to radio? I mean, I know listening patterns have perhaps changed over time. A lot of people still in their cars as they move. Why is radio still a hit?
It's friendliness. Radio is a friend that you've never had. It's friendliness, it's wide reach. People listen to radio for those reasons, and it will continue to grow because of accessibility. It's the most cheapest, or if it's free actually. The only thing that you pay for is to buy a radio receiver. But radio is free. I mean, newspapers you pay, television you pay, online you pay. But also in a continent, especially in Africa, people, because of the level of education and also accessibility of other forms of media, people rely on radio for information. But if you look at in South Africa, for an example, even newspapers, I mean, today there's a story on Sunday Times, they're writing about a presenter that just left Metro. So every week in, week out, newspapers will carry a story about business of radio. It shows the interest of radio broadly. Even television will carry stories about radio. So everyone continuously advocate for radio as a business. So I think for that, there is so much demand and need for radio and love for radio broadly.
And how are people listening, though? I mean, I suppose it's different in developing nations and developed nations, the platforms that people are using. What's the trend that you're seeing in South Africa? In
South Africa, I think radio, people listen to community radio differently. As they would listen to commercial radio differently. I think for community radio station, it's based on the target and public radio that the target audience that they're looking for, which are lower LSM market, people in rural communities who rely on radio to get what's happening in big cities and outside the world where they are. But in big cities, people listen to radio for lifestyle purposes. They listen to music most of the time, as much as there's information that they get out of that. But they're listening for lifestyle purposes, enjoying new music, trends in terms of fashion. So radio, commercial radio becomes sort of a lifestyle, medium as well when you are in big cities and there are commercial radio stations.
What I'm noticing as well now, there's certain times in the day and I can switch to 4 or 5 radio stations and they're all doing talk. Whereas in the past, there used to be just music, wall to wall. What is that saying? Is that what people want to do? They want to express themselves and say things?
Like I said, people want to engage, want to get into conversations, and they want to get into issues. I think the only way that they can do immediately is through radio. People want to express themselves. They've got views. The only way that they can do immediately is when radio is on. And Hence, you see a balance between music and talk. And talk is becoming very, very commercialized as well, because people are getting exposed to television more. They're getting exposed to digital and newspaper more. So then the people want to get into conversations, and there's a balance between talk and music as well, which augurs very well for radio, going forward.
All right, Teresa, I know that you're print and you're a journalist in that world, but radio, how do you consume it? I mean, is it something that's very much a part of your life?
I'm not a big radio listener. I think I mostly listen to it in the car, talk radio. I think there is that thing, if you live in an urban city, talk radio is part of the fabric of your day. So I remember when I first moved to Joburg, I liked to listen to music. Now if I'm in a car, I've got to know what's going on.
So talk is about knowing what's going on. And I think a lot of people are doing that. But I find personally there are times where I'm tired of all the talking, and I just want to listen to some music.
Well, it's true, but remember the nature of radio, that it needs to survive through advertising, especially in a country where there is with public broadcasting, there is no clear funding model. So you need to balance and have conversation that drives social discourse at the same time. As much as you want to listen to music, you've got different stations that are music radio stations. So you're spoiled for choice. If you want to go to SFM, then you have talk. If you are a Zulu speaker, there is Ukhozi FM. Then the programming is done in a nature that it enables, and allows everyone to come in and enjoy radio. I agree with you. Hence, radio is moving towards creating alternatives in terms of streaming platforms, where you go online, you find that Radio So just have a music streaming platform or downloads, and that's an innovation that comes in.
Has radio changed a lot over the years? I remember I used to do radio a long time ago, and at that stage, you were allowed to just go in as a DJ and play whatever songs you want to play. And then over time, I started working for Highveld. That's when I first got introduced to format radio. And there was a deliberate plan of what to play when, what time, and that kind of thing.
Of course, radio is planned, researched, executed. You don't just go on air. You need to understand the consumer, but also you need to understand the delivery times that talks to audiences where they are. So hence there are formats in radio. So it's planned, music is planned, it's scheduled accordingly for targeting, for targeted audiences, and so that you can grow audiences, because it's about numbers. You need to grow numbers both ways.
But has that taken away from the personality?
It doesn't. I think it has brought more structure and discipline in terms of having good radio. Because it will sound very schizophrenic when DJ 1 goes and do 1, 2, 3, 4. You come with your CDs, but also there are issues of regulation and compliance. There's BCSA, there's CASA, there's also music needle time that you're supposed to pay. So radio is a business, so it needs to be structured properly.
All right, let me ask a consumer now. Do you tune into a radio station because of the person that you're hearing, or because of what the station represents?
It can be a bit of both. So it depends on the person and the station. But I mean, I think you can also see how certain presenters can be quite closely aligned with their stations. And like I was saying about radio being the part of the fabric of your day, so sometimes if a lineup changes, it can be quite distressing if you're suddenly listening to someone else on your morning drive.
And that's quite a thing, isn't it?
I think that's a very important point. Radio is personality driven. Sometimes we think it's just about music, but radio is made by personalities. So you don't take away that presenters, personalities and characters that you have. Hence, for example, I'll make a good example. There was a station here, the SABC, where they had a big drive type presenter. And then when he was he was not scheduled for a number of weeks or days. Then there was a lot of conversation on social media, people talking about that. So you can see that personalities play a very important role in making good radio.
Okay, so within the formats, there's still space for, and this then contributes to this experience that we still want to listen to radio.
Of course, I think you can't just go on air and have music and pre-packaged content.
Yeah.
You need someone to create this, and they must have a strong personality. And brands normally want to associate with certain personalities. Hence, numbers decline when certain personalities go and leave radio station. So it's important then for managers and programmers of radio to have this understanding that people come on radio not just for music, because they admire certain personalities, because they're looking for a friend, they're looking for a companion of some sort, and these personalities are key.
So let's take a look and hear what people have been saying. Hashtag SABC Media Monitor, and this is what they've sent. The Observer says, my house and car radios are on 102.7, previously Classic FM. I love that channel as well. Very soothing, and it's a South Africa version, a mix of traditional cultural music and classical music, which is fantastic. Mr. Lechisa says that radio has a role that doesn't seek much attention. You could listen and be doing some work at the same time. And I find that. I mean, I can't study and listen to radio, but I can be doing certain work. And I wonder if that's the same for you.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's also part of the reason for the popularity of podcasts, whether they're kind of standalone podcasts or just maybe downloading an interview you missed on radio, is that you can be doing the dishes or whatever at the same time.
And it is company, because especially if you're on your own, something to have on breaks the silence.
I think, I mean, you're referring to podcasting.
No, the radio generally.
Look, it's like I said, it's very friendly. You
sometimes friendly.
It can be very irritating at some stage, especially when people talk a lot. Hence, you talk about structured radio. And I think sometimes it can be annoying. Remember, once I switch off, it's not possible that I might come back immediately.
All right. So, Kate, we've chatted about radio. Let's move on a little bit. And here's something that's new for us. And we have this new feature, which we hope that you're going to enjoy in the programs going forward. This is where we take a look back on this day in history. And today we go back to the year 1988. And I know many of you weren't even born then. And the SABC did this story about the introduction of tuk-tuks. Let's take a look. Back in time.
There was a stir among Johannesburg taxi operators today following the announcement of the introduction of a new motorcycle taxi service. The taxis, called tuk-tuks, originate in the Far East and are expected to take to the roads within the next few months. The company importing the vehicles hopes to have more than 500 units operating before the end of the year. The service will be aimed at providing short-distance transport for central city visitors. But the idea has so far drawn mixed reaction.
Well, it looks like an exciting new venture, and certainly in Johannesburg we welcome any new innovative idea like this to get away from our stuffy image as just a business city.
Do you think it will fit into the current traffic pattern of Johannesburg?
Yes, I believe it will. Obviously, at the end of the day, the user will determine whether it's a success or not. But certainly, I think we have got a gap, and I certainly think that this could be a very useful contribution to the city.
Number one, the population doesn't warrant it. Number two, the traffic congestion in town, as we know already with these minibuses, are creating more chaos. And with the introduction of the so-called 100 or 200, whatever the case may be, it will just add to it.
All right, so that was Today in History, the introduction of tuk-tuks in 1988. Now, don't forget, you can share your thoughts with us on hashtag SABC Media Monitor. Let us know what year you'd like us to go back in time, and we'll go into our archives and dig up some interesting stories on that day. We're going to take a quick break, and after that, we start taking a look at the newspapers. And first, we go to Swaziland. Right, welcome back, and we're now starting to take a look at what's happening in the newspapers, and we start with one of our other features that we do from time to time, where we go to somewhere on the continent and talk to one of our international editors. And today we're joined via Skype by Zweli Martin Dlamini, who's the editor of the online news portal Swaziland News. Welcome to Media Monitor. It's good to have you on the program again. Let's start with, we understand that you have one of the leading stories in your paper today is that Eswatini is that China wants to terminate diplomatic relations with Taiwan.
Yes, of course, Peter. It's a story that has been going on for some time, but it has been deliberated behind the scenes, rather. It happened that around April or May this year, the embassy of the People's Republic of China facilitated a high-level secret meeting between Eswatini MPs and some of the top government officials in China. The issue here, Peter, as you might be aware, is that China wants to oust Taiwan from the Kingdom of Eswatini, particularly because China wants to dominate the African continent. You will note that Eswatini is now the only country that is not diplomatic ties with the People's Republic of China. So the story is about a meeting that our publication got hold of. Some of the pictures were leaked to us, and we have some evidence that these MPs went to China. The meeting was attended by the ambassador of the People's Republic of China in South Africa, and it appeared, Peter, that it is the same embassy in South Africa that facilitated this meeting, as their tickets were paid by the Chinese. But this matter, Peter, is creating tensions here in the Kingdom of Eswatini. There are those who are saying, no, these MPs actually are right, because as a kingdom we are struggling financially. So cementing diplomatic ties with the Republic, with the People's Republic of China, will help this country in terms of economic growth. But there are those who are saying, no, we don't want China here. We are okay with Taiwan. So it's a
big talking point.
It's a matter that is.
All right. Okay.
Yes, it's a talking point.
Yeah. Let's move on to your next paper, which is which one?
One of the local newspapers, the Sunday Observer.
The Sunday Observer. What's in the paper there?
Maybe the Sunday Observer is leading with the story of a teenager who allegedly killed a 2-year-old child. So the teenager is said to have took the child to a forest and murdered him, but it's a matter that is yet to appear in the courts.
My goodness. And then the other newspaper, the Swaziland Times?
Yeah, the Sunday Times, it's a Sunday edition of the Times of Swaziland. They are leading with the story of the Youth Affairs Director. The Youth Affairs Director is said to have threatened the Undersecretary in the ministry. So another matter that has been going on for some time. The Youth Affairs Director was suspended under questionable circumstances. He was subsequently reinstated through a parliament motion that forced the Ministry of Youth Affairs to reinstate him, because the MPs uncovered that he was rattled. So there are tensions in that ministry in terms of there's no working relationship. In fact, yes.
All right. Zweli Martin Dlamini, editor of the Swaziland News online portal. Thanks so much indeed for joining us on the program and giving us a view of what's making news in Swaziland. All right. From there, we come back home. Let's take a look at the newspapers here at home. And I want to start with you, Teresa, the Weekly Mail and Guardian. And this cover, of course, is... I think on just the face itself tells quite a bit. So take us through why that's your lead story.
I think something that the Mail and Guardian is very good at is doing analysis, which, any weekly, that's kind of our game. And so this week we've got a whole lot of news and analysis about all the machinations that are going on with the public protector. And I think the big question that Franny Rabkin addresses in her article is, what would be the legal route to impeach the public protector? And, that might be an obvious step after all of the last week's news, but it's quite difficult.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. What I've been observing is that there's definitely sides. Some people are for the public protector, some people aren't. And I just wonder, as newspapers and as media, are we telling the story in a way that's fair to the readers and the listeners and the viewers so that they can make up their own mind? Because we're often accused with our headlines, protect us from this mess. It almost sounds as if you've decided already that she is causing a mess.
Yeah, I think we like to be very careful. So if you read some of the actual court judgments, I think it's fair to infer that there has been a missed cause.
Yeah.
I think also with investigative stories we do around it, we're always very careful to investigate our sources. So like any newspaper, there's lots of stories we'd love to publish, but we won't because we're not sure of the motives of the person giving us that story. Just one more thing I'd like to add, and I think it's something that the South African public needs to remember, is that there's a difference between news and analysis.
Right.
So if we publish something as a news story, we'll always have the sources and the documents to back that up. But there's also a place for not too much, but maybe a bit of speculation, a bit of opinion, and that's when you get the analysis or comment tag.
Okay, and that's when the Twitter forces descend upon you. What story grabbed your attention?
The SABC story on Sunday Times.
Sunday Times front page. Was it inside the paper?
I think it's page page 2.
And what does it say?
Treasury takes tough stand on SABC bailout. Basically, that there are conditions on this bailout, that they must go for executives that have been accused of having wasted of money or looted SABC. Remember 2016, I think there was some parliamentary inquiry that went on. I think what is interesting is that nothing happens after that. And SABC sort of goes through all these challenges almost to its knees. There was never an immediacy in terms of sorting the issues. Now SABC now also must go after those who are accused. Are there any criminal charges that have been laid and all those kind of things? I don't know how that's going to pan out, but the most interesting thing is that let's hope this condition, it's not going to delay the bailout and all those things. That's a story that I think interests me, because it's been going on for some time now.
And the public broadcaster is an important institution. It belongs to the public, and the public depend upon it through radio, television, online as well now. So it can't be allowed to fail, much in the same way as ESCOM cannot be allowed to fail.
Exactly. I think sometimes we don't prioritize this platform and make sure that the public broadcaster, it gets all support. For an example, I think also the government needs to look at funding model for the public broadcaster. You know that it relies on advertising. Some things have happened in the past in terms of content that has crippled advertising. It has crippled the confidence. We need to have public confidence. Advertisers need to have confidence, and I think government for the next 5 years, they need to really consider how to come up with the best funding model for the SABC, so that we don't keep on going back and having this type of a problem that we have encountered over the years.
All right, between the two of you, now I'm going to talk about something that's not on the front pages, which I always find quite interesting. Yesterday, EFF had their celebrations turning 6. The actual day was Friday, I guess. So should there be something on the Sunday newspapers at least on this or not? I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching. What's your thoughts?
Can I go first?
Yes.
I think that we've been having a situation where EFF and print media generally, there's been some confrontation, and after former President Zuma left, so the status quo changed. So it's not like what it used to happen in the past. There is that tension of course it's going to play itself out. It's my honest opinion, and we are saying it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it should necessarily be on the front pages.
Okay, but somewhere inside.
Somewhere inside.
I mean, it's one of the biggest parties in the country now.
I think it is. I mean, let us be honest. They are making a lot of noise. They've got presence. They are growing, and they're a new party. We've never had such a wave of a new political party. You like it or you don't like it, they are. But let us be honest that. Indeed, there are a lot of stories to be covered, but also there is NEC happening today. There's a lot happening within the ruling party.
Well, let's talk about that one actually now, because it's Sunday Times, City Press certainly have gone front pages with those two, the NEC, President Ramaphosa, the factional fighting within the party. What do you make of all of this, Teresa? I mean, he's in one paper they said he's daring them to try and get rid of him at the next NGC next year. I mean, could they genuinely be thinking about getting rid of Cyril Ramaphosa?
Well, I'm not sure, but I mean, I think over the last few months, it's become increasingly clear that there is a fight back from the Zuma faction. So, a year is a long time. We'll have to see what happens, Peter.
And the Unity Project?
Yeah. I think we're always told that ANC is a broad church. Clearly, I think we are going to see, these things playing itself out now and then. I think sometimes we speculate things and something has happened within the ANC. I think... I don't think that they will be that careless, but let's wait and see in terms of taking such drastic decisions. They just need to stabilize political, volatility inside the movement so that they can govern the country,
I think one thing that we also mentioned in one of our stories about the public protector is with the Basasa donation to the CR17 campaign, even if that goes through the legal process and Ramaphosa is cleared, there'll always be something attached to his name now. So I think he has to
and he was quick
step
off
carefully.
the block to write this affidavit to the Zondo Commission. All right, okay, so that's the newspapers today, but it's been a busy week. We saw some big stories a short while ago, but let's check what's been on social media this past week, the kinds of stories that have been trending. Let's take a look.
Let's look at the top stories on the SABC News website, but first, social media trends. Following the announcement of his death by a family spokesperson over the weekend, social media has been filled with tributes for Mandla Maseko. Maseko, Space Boy or Afronaut, as he was affectionately known, was involved in a fatal motorbike crash on Saturday night. He was described as an ambitious and selfless young man. The 30-year-old Maseko's memorial service was held at the Air Force Base in Swartkop, Pretoria on Wednesday. Many people took to social media to celebrate his life. Also, hashtag RIP Nonhlenkwanyane and hashtag RIP James Small dominated on social media on Wednesday. This comes after news broke that the two South African icons had passed away. Veteran actress Nonhlenkwanyane died at the age of 77. Nkonyeni received the Order of Ikamanga in silver from President Cyril Ramaphosa, among other accolades. Meanwhile, according to media reports, Small died of heart attack on Wednesday. Small made his debut for the Springbok against New Zealand in Johannesburg in 1992 and played in 47 tests until 1997. Small wore the green and gold jersey 60 times, scoring 27 tries. Also, the hashtag state capture, hashtag Bruce Kulwani dominated this week. Former head of state protocol Bruce Kulwani told the State Capture Commission that he wrongfully used former President Jacob Zuma's name to put pressure on defense official to authorize the landing of the Gupta private jet at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. Kolwani told the State Capture Commission of Inquiry that using the names of former President Jacob Zuma, former Transport Minister Ben Martins, and Defense Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa Nxakula was an error in judgment. The former head of state protocol says this was a great error of judgment which he deeply regrets. He admitted to name-dropping at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry on Tuesday after recorded phone calls were presented as evidence. Kolwani is now South Africa's ambassador to the Netherlands. The hashtag PIC, hashtag Majila also dominated on social media. Former Public Investment Corporation CEO Dan Majila told the PIC Commission that political influence at the PIC affected the organization negatively. This week, Majila appeared before the PIC Commission for the first time. Majila has been fingered for some of the questionable dealings at the PIC. Majila served as CEO for 4 years. Among other revelations this week was the alleged 2 million VBS loan he received from the now defunct bank. And finally, the hashtag Bafana Bafana and hashtag Nigeria dominated on social media. Nigeria has knocked out Bafana Bafana out of the African Cup of Nations in Egypt. Bafana went into the clash having not lost to the Super Eagles since 2013. And although Bafana performed better than their two first games against Ivory Coast and Morocco respectively, they were just not lucky enough to crush the Super Eagles. Before the highly anticipated clash, South Africans were divided on social media about how the team would fare. Others, including former Sport Minister and now Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula, had their reservation about the match. But others were optimistic about the national team's performance. And now, for your top stories on the SABC News website as liked by users. The story about the group of animal rights activists who were gathered outside the Vodacom Durban July event to protest against treatment of horses that took part in the annual race pulled traffic to the SABC News website. And a story about Hawks hoping to make a breakthrough in their investigation into VBS Mutual Bank dominated on the site. Also, the story about the city of Cape Town saying it has helped hundreds of homeless people to get off the streets through its various social interventions pulled traffic to the site. And finally, news that Northern Cape Premier Dr. Zamani Soul's maiden State of the Province address was expected to cost at least 1.1 million less than that of his predecessor generated traffic to the SABC News website. That's all for this week. For SABC News, I'm Tsepiso Moche in Johannesburg.
All right, so before we disappear, I'm going to ask our guest editors today to give us a sense of what they think might be the big stories for the week ahead. Shall we start with ladies first, Teresa?
Thank you. I actually want to put my hand up for a kind of, not unreported, but unnoticed story almost. Well, it's not unnoticed, it's the PIC Commission of Inquiry.
Right.
But because we have so much going on and the Zondo Commission into State Capture, I think people haven't been paying so much attention to it.
And it is a really important one. Government, the biggest employer, so their pension fund with trillions of the rand under administration, such an important story. You're absolutely right, and we should be paying more attention to it. For sure, right? Yeah.
I think for me, well, it's a widely reported story, but I think you're going to see more things coming out. Who funded what campaign leading to the ANC elected conference, but also who met with the opposition to try and dislodge the previous former president. So you'll see those things playing itself out, and I think that is going to play itself out because I honestly think that Derek Honeycomb is not the only person that was meeting with opposition.
Well, he couldn't have done it for himself, right?
Exactly.
And so on Tuesday, the NEC is going to be feedbacking to the public about what's been discussed, and it sounds as if, this is according to the City Press, that the Honeycomb issue has been pushed out to the top 6, and I guess that's an indicator of just how divided they are about the issue.
Exactly. And another story I saw, I forgot which paper it was in, but it was about how Ace Magashile didn't address the media like the Secretary General typically would. So I thought that was a very interesting little puzzle piece.
All right. Anyway, we've got to leave it there. Unfortunately, we run out of time. Thank you so much for being great guest editors on the program today.
Thank you so much.
And you at home, thank you so much indeed for tuning in, wherever you may be watching. Actually, it doesn't always have to be at home. Thanks so much for tuning in. Join us again next week at the same time for more Media Monitor. Till then, bye-bye.